We are in lesson 9, the prophets of wisdom. And let me read, I'm not going to read all of the verses right up front. The Proverbs 3, verses 11 through 18. It says, "My son, do not despise the chastening of the Lord, nor detest his correction. For whom the Lord loves, he corrects, just as a father, the son in whom he delights. Happy is the man who finds wisdom, and the man who gains understanding. For her proceeds are better than the profits of silver, and her gain than fine gold. She is more precious than rubies, and all the things you may desire cannot compare with her. Length of days is in her right hand, and her left hand riches and honor. Her ways are ways of pleasantness, and all her paths are peace. She is a tree of life to those who take hold of her, and happy are all who retain her." So we started last week in chapter 3, and just the exhortation not to forget the law, to keep the commandments. Ultimately, we focused in verses 5 and 6, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not in your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. The great promise of God in associated with wisdom is when we submit our wills and submit our lives to him, he directs. And then verses 11 and 12, it shifts a little bit. So we have verses 5 and 6, trusting in the Lord, he will direct your paths. Verse 9, the promise, verse 7, fear the Lord, depart from evil, it will be health to your flesh, strength to your bones. Verse 9, honor the Lord with your possessions, your vats will be filled, will overflow with new wine. So you have these series of promises. If you do this, God will do this. If you trust, God will direct. If you fear, you will have health and strength. If you honor the Lord, he will honor you, really. He will supply you richly. So you have these great promises associated with wisdom and the wise relationship with God. And then verse 11 and 12, he says, do not despise the chastening of the Lord. Now, I like the idea of health and strength and full barns. Not so much chastening. That's not near as pleasant. But he puts it all together. It's all part of the same unit. So I broke it artificially just for time's sake and going through these lessons. But we start with the chastening of the Lord. It ties back into not letting mercy and truth forsake you. It ties back to trusting and honoring the Lord and fearing the Lord. And also do not despise the chastening, because what chastening gives is as valuable as divine direction, strength, health, and plenty. And that's part of the understanding of wisdom, is that discipline is profitable. If you remember when I went through and defined various words, crucial words in Proverbs, one of those words is correction, discipline, instruction. And that word instruction, it means a corrective instruction. If you remember when I defined it, I talked about it in two ways. Sometimes it's the correction that comes along and says, you did that wrong. You need to do better. You need to fix it in this way. Sometimes it's a preemptive correction. Don't do that. It's a bad way to go. Don't go there. But it always has that idea of correction. There's an edge to this word, a bit of a harshness to it, if you will. That really is not pleasant instruction, at least to hear. But what he says here, verse 20 of Proverbs 19, is listen to counsel, receive this correction, even if it's harsh correction, and so that you will be wise in the end. That's the kind of thing that's going on here. And the chastening of the Lord is this unpleasant instruction. And it has rich benefit. And one of the reasons for this, the benefits of this, one of the benefits of correction that he shows us, it is the evidence of God's love. Think about that. We know this from the book of Hebrews, because Hebrews quotes this verse, these two verses. It applies them to the Christian life. And we recognize that that being chastened by God, corrected by God, is proof we are His children. What an incredible benefit. Again, it's not pleasant, but it is the assurance that we are His children, that He loves us. Verse 12, He also says, just as a father, the Son in whom He delights, that God has a delight in us. He is pleased with us. He is pleased to correct us. There's an optimism in His correction. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you've worked with somebody, or maybe you've been trying to train somebody, and you teach them and you correct them and you correct them, and you come to the point where you just say, they're not listening. They're not paying any attention to anything I am saying. I'm done. Basically, you give up on them and trying to help them because they're not listening. And God's correction is this, if you will, this optimism that we're able to learn. He corrects us because there's hope. We can learn something. He doesn't give us over and just leave us in our folly, but because He loves us, He's pleased with His children, He corrects us. And part of what this teaches us is we're thinking about all of these great promises of wisdom. And they are great. And this doesn't in any way minimize the magnitude of those promises. But we're confronted here with affliction, the chastening of the Lord. That is painful. And we cannot imagine that the pursuit of wisdom will be free from pain. We cannot imagine that in the working of God in us to make us wise, that it will be free from pain. Rather, there will be suffering and affliction. We cannot imagine that pursuing wisdom just leads to ever-increasing happiness. But rather, God will sometimes use His stern correction to teach us a greater wisdom. And as we're thinking about how Proverbs work, I remind you as we go through the book of Proverbs, we cannot just take one proverb as saying everything on the matter. And even here in these first 9 chapters, they're a lot more thorough than the later Proverbs. But even there, we cannot take one proverb as saying everything that can and should be said on the matter. Rather, we have to bring it in and compare it to all the other proverbs on the same subject. So it says, verse 4, if you do not let mercy and truth forsake you, write them on the tablet of your heart, you will find favor and high esteem in the sight of God and man. Verse 11, my son, do not despise the chastening of the Lord, nor detest His correction. For whom the Lord loves, He corrects. So if you find favor with God, you can expect correction. Now that is, we don't like that, and that is counterintuitive to us. Because we think if God is pleased with me, it's going to be just blessing after blessing after blessing after blessing. And what Proverbs tells us is we compare proverb to proverb is, yes, there will be rich blessing and there will be chastening and correction. They're both present. So, verse 17, we now get really into now the praises of wisdom. Actually, verse 14 down to verse 18 tells us why we should be seeking after wisdom. We saw some of it earlier in chapter 1. We're going to see more of it later. Remember, Proverbs 1 through 9 is building. It's intensifying as it goes back to these various themes. It's adding to it. And so now we're getting more details about why wisdom is so wonderful. Why is wisdom worth being chastened? Why is it worth the harsh correction of God? Well, part of what it tells us is that wisdom's ways are wonderful. Verse 17, her ways are way of pleasantness, and all her paths are peace. Wisdom really is a good way to live. Verse 14 Her proceeds are better than the profits of silver, and her gain than fine gold. So first bullet, wisdom is better than gold and silver. Wisdom is better than gold and silver. Specifically, the proceeds of wisdom are better than the profits of silver and gold. So if you take, let's say you have a treasure chest tucked under your bed full of gold and silver. Whatever reason you've done that and you decide that you're going to cash it in and you're going to invest. Might be a bad idea right now, but you're going to invest in the stock market and you're going to hope for your returns on that. So you take all of that treasure, you invest it, and you're beginning to get proceeds. As the stock market hopefully goes back up and you're seeing some returns on your investment, you're getting money back. Your money is earning money. It's worked like that for millennia. You put your money to work and you put your money to work rightly, it'll make money. That's what he's talking about, is that profit that we get when we use money and we use it well, when we have capital that we can invest and we can begin to turn it to more useful things. And from that, many people see, I've got security. I have investments, long-term investments. There's a retirement there. I have the ability to buy what I want. I can live how I want. There's comfort there. There's ease. There's peace. There's security and rest because I have this money that's making me money. And what he says is that the praise of that wisdom, what you get out of wisdom, what you get from wisdom, so if you will, if you invest wisdom, what wisdom returns to you is far more valuable than what silver and gold return to you. Second bullet, wisdom is more precious than jewels. More precious than jewels. Verse 15, it says it just simply, she is more precious than rubies. Take these things which are valued, highly esteemed, are beautiful. And wisdom is worth more than that. It's more precious, more treasured than that. And then, as if that's not enough, the second half of verse 15, all the things that you may desire cannot compare with her. Wisdom cannot be compared to any other desire. The things we get from wisdom are greater than anything that we get from just the satisfaction of our desires. That's what it's talking about. Wisdom cannot be compared to any other desire. If we have wisdom, if we get something that's worth more than anything else that we may want. And part of the reason for all of this is the preeminence of wisdom. And I'm not going to spend long in this section because we're going to come back to it in chapter 8. But what he tells us, the Lord by wisdom founded the earth. By understanding, he established the heavens. By his knowledge, the depths were broken up, and clouds dropped down the dew. Here's how important wisdom is. Wisdom is the instrument of God's creation. Wisdom is that which God used when he made the world. You think about that for a second. What Proverbs is calling us to utilize and to pursue and to possess is this very same thing which God demonstrated. He already possessed it, but he demonstrated in his creation. So that we rightly say God's creation is the evidence of an infinitely wise being. We look around and you think about how things work. I talked briefly this morning about a seed dying and growing up into a plant. And I didn't do a whole lot of research on it, but just a little bit of reading I did on it this week. It's astounding. I mean, just that really grabbed my attention, the fact that the cell structures change. That a seed, it opens up, these enzymes begin to work, the cell walls begin to break down, but the cells don't die. They begin to form new cell structures. So you take a little thing that looks like a lima bean, and you sprouts up into this great big plant full of other lima beans. But it's all this marvelous process. It starts with this seed, add some sunlight and some water and some nutrients, and there you got a plant. That's an astounding process. And that's just one tiny thing. If you want to read a really good book about why evolution cannot possibly be true, read Darwin's Black Box. It focuses in on the inner workings of the cell. One single cell, you may have looked at it in a microscope in science class years and years ago. You see just a little tiny cell swimming around in the water or whatever it is. And inside that, the incredible complexity of work that is being done. The process is taking place in something that is completely invisible to our naked eye. That it's, trillions upon trillions of them in the world. And something that we buy soap to kill it all off. That kind of thing we don't even care about, and yet inside it, this remarkable, really machine-like or a warehouse and factory-like process. Everything moving orderly from one place to the next, everything doing exactly the right thing. And we can't even see it. Most of human history didn't even realize it was there. And you look in that and you see, boy, somebody super smart came up with this. There's incredible wisdom in making that work. And we can keep going. I can give you dozens of examples of how God's wisdom is displayed in creation, and you could give me a dozen different examples of how it's displayed in creation. But what we see in these two verses is God, by wisdom, founded the earth. So when it says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, God, by wisdom, created that earth. So when it says the earth was without form and void, God had by wisdom formed that, unfinished and empty earth. It is by wisdom that he did it. By wisdom he established the heavens. Look at the stars. Go outside any night and look at the stars. Look at the constellations rotating around. And then consider what they are. They're not just little pinpricks of light. They are suns. Thousands upon thousands of them that we can see. And God put them up there, and they are moving in this incredible choreographed movement across the heavens, all working exactly as they're supposed to by the wisdom of God. He opened the deeps. It is by his understanding that he established them. He put them there. If you will, the earth there, he carved out the deep places. That really is what it's describing. He carved out the deep places for the waters. And then he also just waters the land. Clouds drop down the dew. They lived in a very arid environment. I know I've mentioned that, and we'll talk about it again as we go through Proverbs, because water is a vivid picture in Proverbs. And there was rain, a lot of their moisture, and it was dew. And so just every morning, the dew on the ground. There's a place in a desert in South America. I think it's called the Atacama Desert. It's the driest place on the earth. But along the western edge of that desert, there is life and plants, trees, and cacti and other things grow. There's no rain, ever. But they're nourished. Every morning, the mist comes up off the ocean, the nearby Pacific Ocean, and waters all of those plants with dew. And they live entirely just on the dew that forms upon them. It's the wisdom of God in providing that. So these four things, we talk about the heavens, the earth, the deeps, the land. We have end to end, A to Z, heaven and earth, the oceans, land. It's describing all of God's creative work, so that God's wisdom was active when he created everything. And it remains active. That's, if you notice especially the fourth one there, it's something ongoing. It wasn't just wisdom in the past, but rather it is wisdom that continues. And it wasn't just wisdom that set things in motion, but wisdom that continues to work. So the God of Proverbs is not a deistic God. He's not the God that set everything in motion and stepped back and just let it run. That's the God of Thomas Jefferson, of deism. The God of Proverbs and the God of the Bible is a God who is active. So he did establish everything, set it in motion, and continues to be actively involved in keeping it going by his wisdom. Michael V. Fox says the crowning proof of wisdom's glory is that God uses it. If God works by wisdom, we should too. The proceeds of wisdom. It says in verse 13, happy. Happy is the man who finds wisdom and the man who gains understanding. Verse 18, wisdom is a tree of life to those who take hold of her, and happy are all those who retain her. So really we would say the possessor of wisdom is fortunate. He is blessed. He is one to be envied by others because he has gained that which is most desirable. Psalm 1, blessed is the man. If you remember the psalm, walks on in the counsel of the ungodly and goes through there and describes in the contrast the way of the righteous man and the way of the wicked man. Or Matthew 5, blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are the meek. All of these ones who are blessed, not because they have what all the world values, but because they have wisdom. And so this wisdom it just simply brings happiness. I gave you these earlier. Wisdom is better than silver or gold, is more precious than jewels, and incomparable. So that the proceeds of wisdom are much more valuable than any other desirable thing. So I would say it this way. Wisdom is an investment worth making. That's what he's teaching us. Verse 16, it says, length of days are in her right hand. Verse 18 again, she is a tree of life. Wisdom gives long life. And there is, I think as we read this in Proverbs and we come to this idea of the tree of life, and often we see the pictures of life in Proverbs, there are times where I think we rightly read it with an eternal subtext, so that while it is absolutely talking about life now, it is also looking ahead to life in the future. That it is by wisdom that we have eternal life. And not that our wisdom earns us eternal life, certainly not, but rather through that wisdom leads us to the one who gives eternal life. That wisdom is the one that brings us to understand the truths of the gospel. And so that by wisdom we have a long life, a full life, an eternal life. And then verses 22 through 25. Verse 21 says, my son, let them not depart from your eyes. Keep sound wisdom and discretion, so they will be life to your soul and grace to your neck. Then you will walk safely in your way, and your foot will not stumble. When you lie down, you will not be afraid. Yes, you will lie down, and your sleep will be sweet. Do not be afraid of the sudden terror, nor of the trouble from the wicked when it comes. So now we have the provision. What does wisdom give us? I mean, really, we have these proceeds from wisdom, the return on our investment, but wisdom keeps giving. There's more and more. It tells us in verse 22 that we have life to your soul, grace to your neck, so that there is a beauty and an abundant life. Again, I keep using this definition, but I think it's an excellent one of this abundant life. It's a life worth living, and a life worth living over. It's a life that's to be desired. That's what he's talking about. Is this, and this idea of grace to your neck. It's just simply, it is that. It's beauty. It's that which is attractive. That there is an attractiveness to wisdom that comes with wisdom. Now, it's not the kind of attractiveness that's going to put you on the cover of a magazine, but it's a much better attractiveness. It is that which is recognized as honorable, as truly desirable. It is that which doesn't fade away. It doesn't wrinkle. It doesn't age. It may mature and grow, but it retains its beauty. It also promises protection and guidance. So that we have that we will walk safely, verse 23, and your foot will not stumble. So we have the protection there of just your foot not stumble. You're not even going to stub your toe. That really is the picture. If you've ever walked through your house in the dark, and maybe the dog has moved something in the middle of the floor, and you kick it because you can't see where you're going, don't know what it is, and just there, even worse, you kick the end table as you're walking through, and hear your toe snap, and feel that unpleasantness. Wisdom says no. Wisdom gives a guidance that's protective, that shows you exactly where to go, that leads you from the dangerous and destructive paths. Wisdom promises that clear direction in life. Wisdom also gives confidence and peace. It says that you will lie down without fear. You'll lie down and not even be afraid. That's really just a simple and a really precious promise. I know there are many periods in their life, and some go through their whole life. They lie down at night and they begin to dread. They begin to worry about this or that or the other. They don't really look forward to going to bed because they know that all of a sudden their brain's going to be yelling at them about this or that or the other. And wisdom promises a confidence, a peace in your sleep, that you can lie down without fear of what has happened that day or what may happen tomorrow. And with that, it says your sleep will be sweet. It'll be just that peace, that rest, that you're able to rest easily. And when you think about how much money is spent on sleep aids, medication to help you fall asleep, or they're not drugs necessarily, but various other things. Melatonin, I think, is one of the things people take to try to fall asleep quicker. Or you have the white noise machines, or you have all these various techniques and tricks that people use just to sleep. And I'm all for white noise. We keep a fan going all the time just because of the white noise. But that's not the source of peace. That's not the source of rest. Wisdom gives genuine rest. And then there's not afraid. Verse 25, not afraid of the sudden terror. If you look back if you remember back in chapter 1, that wisdom says because they rejected my counsel, that she's going to laugh at them when the terror comes like a storm and destruction like a whirlwind. There was that quick overthrow, that immediate terror that struck the fool. And those who have wisdom will not fear that. They will not fear that destruction because they've already put in place in their lives those things which are necessary to protect them. But then there's even further. We talk about the protection of wisdom a little bit more. Verse 26, for the Lord will be your confidence and will keep your foot from being caught. God will be your confidence. Here's the source of rest. Here's the source of peace. It's God. It's not wisdom, ultimately, but it is God, because God is the one who will keep you from being ensnared. You probably all know what a snare is. That little loop put on the ground and got a trip there attached to it. So an animal comes along, puts your foot in, maybe it sets off the trap and it yanks it tight and snares them. That's what it's talking about. God is going to work and keep you from being ensnared. He will provide that protection. You can rest confident in Him. And here we see the function of wisdom is ascribed to God. So that ultimately what's going on is that God is the one giving these benefits. So wisdom is not an actual being. Wisdom has no power. Wisdom is if you want to say an idea, it's an abstract. It is a way of living. It is a way of thinking. We recognize that we can certainly truly say somebody is wise. He possesses wisdom, but wisdom is in no way a tangible thing, and wisdom itself doesn't do anything. But rather, the God who created everything by wisdom built into the world these benefits of wisdom. He ordered the world to operate in a certain way. When it operates in a certain way, it operates best. It's happiest, if you will. And so, and God has ordered the world so that when we walk and we operate in the way we're supposed to, the way of wisdom, it is best. It is happiest. And it is God who administrates those blessings from wisdom. So when we talk about the proceeds of wisdom that are better than silver and gold, they are proceeds that come from God. When we talk about this tree of life that gives abundant and long life, it is that which comes from God. And so that wisdom, we cannot read wisdom as a personification of God. I think we err if we say that wisdom is God, even if we're using it as a personification. It's an aspect of God's character. God is wise, but wisdom is not God. And when I say God is wise, I do not even mean in the sense that I say God is love or God is holy, but rather all that God does is wise. And so to listen to wisdom, to love wisdom, ultimately is to listen to God and to love Him. And so our response to the invitation of wisdom is our response to God, because the wisdom in Proverbs that's offered to us is God's wisdom. And so we have to, verse 26 really is crucial in our understanding of what's going on in all of this conversation about wisdom. It ties us back to God. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. The fear of the Lord is the fruit of wisdom, because it is God who administrates the blessings of wisdom. It is God who operates wisely and calls us to live wisely. And so God will do these things for us. The performance of wisdom. What do we do with wisdom? First, do not hate God's corrective chastening. I've already alluded to Hebrews chapter 12. I'm not going to go back to that again. If we want to be wise, we must not reject it. We must not despise it. We must receive it and be instructed by it. And that's the other part, is we permit God's chastening to instruct you. Hebrews 12 tells us that those profit who are exercised by the chastening of the Lord, because they bring the fruit, they bear the fruit of righteousness. When we let God's chastening instruct us, it produces in us that which is good. It is fruitful. If we resist it, we reject it, we murmur and complain about it, it's not as fruitful. If we submit to it, we recognize it as the loving care of a loving God. It brings rich benefit. We also recognize that true happiness is found in true wisdom. We have so desperately need this today. We absolutely live in a world which is driven by its own pleasure. We live in a culture which what it demands most is that which pleases itself. It imagines that happiness is found in whatever I'm doing. And so that we have dispensaries across the UP promising happiness a puff at a time. We have buildings and retailers, we have retailers throughout the UP promising happiness a sip at a time. We have people on TV that are promising happiness if you'll do this, if you will just buy their product or follow your heart, or if you have the liberty to do this, or you cut out these toxic people from your life. There's 101 ways that are out there offering you happiness, and none of them work. Because we weren't designed to be happy by some sort of chemically induced process. We were not designed to be happy by living out whoever we think we are on the inside. We were not even designed to be happy when sitting outside by the river and just watching the water go by, though I think that's closer. We were designed to be happy in a right relationship with God. We were designed to be happy in wisdom. That's why Psalms tells us that at God's right hand are eternal pleasures. That's why it is the one who does not walk in the way of the ungodly, but instead he meditates on the law of God. He delights in the law of God. That one is truly happy, truly blessed, because he has found wisdom. He has found how to live according to his design. And in that is wisdom. And we desperately need to remind ourselves always, because we're bombarded from every form of entertainment out there, that there's happiness found in some other way. And we need to continually remind ourselves, no, that happiness, true happiness, that which brings us the greatest joy and delight, is ultimately found in true wisdom. And then we can sit out by the river or hike in the woods. Yeah, that's about the only things that make us happy. Fishing, I'm sorry, Jim, fishing. We can do those things that we enjoy wisely. We can enjoy them as the blessings of God. We can enjoy them righteously and find in them true happiness. It's in the illicit attempts at happiness that there's no happiness. But when we follow things, the good gifts licitly, properly, we find happiness because it's wise. And then do not let wisdom slip away. This is that passive sense. Then we go all the way back to verse 3, let not mercy and truth forsake you. Do not just let them slip away. It really takes holding on to them. We do not let, in verse 21, we do not let them depart from your eyes. Don't lose sight of them. Again, there's so many distractions, so many things turning us away. Do not let it slip away. Do not by neglect, by inattention, by carelessness, let that happen. Guard wisdom and discretion to prevent their loss. That's that idea there, keep. It's of a guard. It's someone standing watch over something. It's somebody who is attentive to guard it. So there's a rejection of the passive neglect. There's an embracing of an active attention that we do not lose them. Because wisdom is more valuable than anything else we get in this world. It's worth the trouble. It's worth the cost.